San Francisco's Airbnb situation was super bad this year, right? From the beginning in the winter to spring, all the Airbnb guys were expecting, like, a massive inflow of tourist VCs, investors, you name it. Right? And there's a lot of Airbnb units in San Francisco, and many of these units are actually pretty good. And prices are being cut like crazy. In fact, just go to a random page. Right? And pretty much out of our 4 or 5 units, you're gonna be seeing one of 2 price cuts. And these price cuts are really heavy too. Like, for example, this one, $145 down to $99 a night in a pretty good area of San Francisco. That's insane. Right? Look at this one. $173 down to $138, and you get even more price cuts as time goes on. And some of these price cuts are getting more and more crazy every single day because it simply just can't rent out any of these units. And if you look at when some of the Airbnb owners saying that they're actually very, very scared of, and recently, I went on the Airbnb subreddit and looked around and looked at the California ones. I go to the Oakland ones and San Jose ones. The San Francisco ones, everyone, especially in the Bay Area, is very scared with the whole Airbnb situation, especially people during the pandemic. They went on Zillow. Right? They went to San Francisco real estate because they were expecting tech workers to come back after the pandemic, and they bought up a lot of these properties at very low interest rates. And people got some really good interest rates, like 2.8 to 3.7. And they bought a bunch of these units, and they were lit. Right? They're like, okay, man. And when the pandemic is over, the next few months, we're gonna be getting a lot of tours and VCs, and we could actually rent these out. But surprise, surprise, San Francisco is just such a bad city. The crime rate is crazy high. The shoplifting is out of control. And even in Ross, they got, like, handbags and perfumes being locked up. And that kinda just shows you how bad the situation is in San Francisco when the Ross is locking up stuff that isn't even Louis V. It's just like a normal handbag. Not even that expensive. They had to lock it up because of crazy high shoplifting. And because of this, businesses are moving out. 151,000 office employees no longer want to come to the city anymore to work. And you also have several other things like this doom loop, right? As more businesses leave, more workers leave, more workers leave, tech companies leave as well, because when there's no longer talent coming to this city, everyone just simply wants to just leave this city. This is fantastic. Great weather. Great environment. In fact, San Francisco was actually one of my go-to cities, but not anymore. There's so many better places like, Las Vegas, Austin, Miami, for example. And, yes, I said Vegas, they actually have a decent amount of tech companies right now. All at the expense of San Francisco. So Airbnb guys are saying that out of 30 nights, they've only really been getting about 2 to 3 nights. Whereas before the pandemic, out of 30 nights, they could easily rent out, like, 27 to 28 nights. That is a fat profit. And back in the early days of Airbnb, like, before the pandemic in San Francisco, Airbnb was just such a profitable industry. Like, people who had, like, 2 to 3 properties are set for the rest of their life. Now, not only did people overbuy San Francisco properties during the pandemic, but now you're seeing a lot of these size foreclosing several of these units because many loans are unfixed. Right? You got a lot of people borrowing money from the bank. They were expecting a fat profit. Nobody was expecting a high interest rate. Interest rates are the highest in, like, 10, 20 years. And the amount of people going for mortgages is at an all-time low, like a 20 to 30-year low. And we could be seeing the 30-year mortgage hitting 8% at this point. So you already have people right now. They're suffering. Right? These Airbnb landlords are taking massive hits, and crazy part about this is they're not really sure how to pay this back. It's one thing to have very high expenses and mortgage rates, by the same time could easily rent out your units. That way, you're still making some money, but it's another thing when 1, your property value goes down. 2, you came and sell it because nobody wants to buy it. And also interest rates are super high. It's super expensive to pretty much pay your monthly mortgage, and nobody wants to rent it. Right? The last part's important. If there's always a lot of demand for San Francisco Airbnb, it's fine. Right? Sure, your property might lose a little value, but you could probably, go through the storm. But when nobody's renting and when you see some of the fattest Airbnb price cuts, like, constantly use price cuts all the time for a lot of these units. It just shows you firsthand that the situation isn't great at all when you've got price cuts and we've got, a lot of people just foreclosing on several of these units. It's looking pretty bad for the San Francisco Airbnb community. You are also going to be seeing that San Francisco real estate market is an absolute disaster. The residential real estate in this place completely messed up. We're also going to show you a pretty crazy clip of, San Francisco shoplifting, Targets being robbed. And there's a lot of these clips, showing this kind of stuff is organized crime. And this just makes the city just unlivable. Nobody really wants to live here anymore. I mean, even Target is closing down 2 stores at this point. And it's no longer the most expensive. And, of course, the craziest part is some valuable pieces of land. If you look at this condo that recently got built, very high-end, very nice-looking condo, honestly, even like a glass bridge walkway, that's pretty lit. Guess what's happening here? They came and sell most of these units. Most of the unit are not being sold. People who bought these came and rent them out. And now we have one of the biggest projects in San Francisco. This building here, which is One Oak, this plot of land is supposed to for a skyscraper. But the developer behind the 40-story building is now given at the property. They're given the property back to a lender because they just can't make any more money. Developer Build has filed a foreclosure note for One Oak development. Guys, come on. San Francisco, New York City, Miami. If you get approved for skyscraper, which only gets approved a few times a year, which makes it ultra rare. These guys probably had to spend a lot of time trying to convince the city officials to build this tower because these towers are very profitable. And guess what happened? They're nah. They got approved for it, but they don't want to build it. And this isn't the only tower that has stopped building. You got Hayes Points, which is right next to his location. They have started just giving the land back to its owner. They even got the machinery ready. But they pretty much said that they can't build this $1,200,000,000 sketch. There's no investors to back them up. Nobody wants this. Right? And this just shows you how bad a San Francisco real estate is. Even New York City, despite the office vacancies, New York City has several skyscrapers under construction, even in Seattle. Right? We say bad things about Seattle, but even has some crazy amount of construction. Toriano, crazy amount of construction. Miami, say no more. Construction is where. But then you go to San Francisco. Construction is completely quiet with 2 of the biggest real estate projects completely canceled to show you how bad a dire situation is. And even, surprisingly, if you go to China, we all saw how bad the Chinese stock market is, how bad the property market is. But if you go to, Shanghai, Shenzhen, you'll be surprised. Even Hong Kong. You'll be surprised to see that they're still building skyscrapers and they actually have not that high of an office vacancy rate compared to San Francisco. San Francisco is, almost 40%. Even in China, some of the high-end cities in the middle, the vacancies are only, 10 to 15% surprisingly. So this is what's going on here. And this really just shows you that San Francisco's real estate is completely hit really, really hard. And let's just see how it happens. Airbnb bookings are down, foreclosures are up, the interest rates will continue to go higher.